Hello and welcome back to Doctor Who, The Cancelled Years. In this video, we'll be covering Season 49 of Doctor Who. So, let's get started. Season 49 would have been the third season for Peter Capaldi as the Doctor, the last season for Tom Ellis as Richard McIntyre, the second season for Vicky McClure as Kelsey Hall, and the fourth season for Paul Cornell as showrunner. This season would have marked the beginning of the end for the Cornell era. In 2012, it was announced that Season 49 was to be the final season for both Capaldi and Cornell, however they would go on to do the 50th anniversary special. Vicky McClure would also stay on for the 50th, however it was announced that Tom Ellis would be leaving in Season 49. In this video I'll be covering just Season 49, with the 50th anniversary special getting its own video soon. Behind the scenes, both Piers Wenger and Beth Willis left the show. Replacing them would be the new head of drama at BBC Wales, Faith Penhall, and Caroline Skinner. Also, Sam Wollenberg would have left as producer, leaving only Marcus Wilson and Denise Paul. And now, let's get to the episodes. The first episode would have been The Plague of the Cybermen, written by Paul Cornell. The story sees the Doctor and companions visiting a planet-sized market, where the Doctor discovers reports of people suddenly falling ill after being bitten by a strange insect. Upon investigating the victims, he finds that their skin is slowly being turned into metal. It turns out that the Cybermen are responsible. The Cybermen plan to use a new type of cybermat to infect and convert people into a new type of Cyberman named Cybersynths, who look almost human but in fact controlled by the Cybermen. Eventually, however, the Cybermen are defeated when the Doctor confronts the Cyber Controller and disables the emotional inhibitor in every Cyberman, which causes them to feel emotions again and results in them dying in pain. The second episode would have been Scrap Metal, written by Jonathan Morris. The story sees the TARDIS arriving on a small mining spaceship, where the Doctor finds that the crew have found a dead Dalek, and, not knowing what it is, brought it on board. The Doctor tries to get the crew to destroy the Dalek, however they think he's trying to trick them into believing the Dalek is worthless, so they lock him, Richard and Kelsey up. Meanwhile, the crew attempt to repair the Dalek, and after pumping electricity into it, it switches on and begins to kill everyone. All of the power is drained from the ship and the crew are left in the dark to hide from the Dalek. The story then sees the Doctor working with the remaining crew to restore the ship's power, while also trying to destroy the Dalek. Eventually, the crew are able to enable a backup generator and the Doctor tricks the Dalek into entering an airlock room. The Doctor then activates the airlock and the room is emptied of air, which causes the Dalek shell and mutant to explode. The third episode would have been Vengeance from Beneath, written by Joseph Lidster. The story would have been set in Salcom and would have saw the Doctor companions investigating into a series of murders. It turns out that a colony of sea devils are responsible after they are accidentally woken up by a new oil rig. The sea devils demand that they have their planet back, however when the people of Salcom refuse, they begin to try and take over the resort. The Doctor tries to make peace between the Sea Devils and humans, however the Sea Devils end up being killed when someone calls for the military, who end up killing the Sea Devils. Thank you to Time Lord Master 108 for letting me use this story idea. The fourth episode would have been The Mystery of Angela's Edge, written by Alan Barnes. The story would have saw the Doctor investigating strange reports about people vanishing when they get close to a cliff edge face named Angela's Edge. He learns that all throughout history, people who get too close to the edge have been reported missing and never found since. It turns out that the island that the cliff is on is infested with weeping angels, who trap their victims in a pocket universe containing a care home, where the angels feed off the days that these people never had. Eventually, the angels are stopped when the Doctor lures the angels into a deep underground cave and tricks the angels into looking at each other so that they can never move again, before sealing off the cave with dynamite. The Doctor then attempts to rescue the people in the Pocket universe, however he finds that he can't as it's a one-way system, so the Doctor is forced to leave the people trapped in the Pocket universe. The fifth episode would have been The Eight Truths, written by Eddie Robson. The story sees the Doctor leaving Kelsey on Earth in 2013 at the request of Richard, while he and Richard help a scientist look for a lost space probe. She eventually comes into contact with an organisation named the Eightfold Truth, who brainwash her into believing that the Doctor and Richard were manipulating her, which causes her to leave the two of them and join up with the Eightfold Truth. After learning about Kelsey joining the Eightfold Truth, the Doctor decides to research them and works with a scientist named Avishka and a journalist named Kelly to dig up information about them. They find that they predict that a rebel sun will come to Earth and wipe out anyone who doesn't believe in the Eightfold Truth. Kelly tells the Doctor that the Eightfold Truth use blue crystals to help people clear their mind and feel better, so the Doctor asks her to find one for him. Meanwhile, we see that Kelsey has been tested and has been found to be someone that the organisation believes to be the chosen one, so she's taken to see the founder of the company, Clark Goodman. Eventually, it appears that the Eightfold Truth's prophecy comes true, as a rebel sun soon appears in the sky, and more people start signing up to the Eightfold Truth in fear. The story ends with Kelly bringing the blue crystal from the Eightfold Truth to the Doctor, who instantly recognises it as a crystal from Metebelis 3, and we see that the Eightfold Truth is being operated by the Eight Legs, and that Kelsey is now being controlled by the Queen Spider. And we end the story on that cliffhanger. The 6th episode would have been World Wide Web, written by Eddie Robson. The story would see the Doctor working with his allies to try and stop the Eight Legs, as well as rescue Kelsey. We find that the Queen Spider, who is now crowned herself as the new Great One, is using an ancient Time Lord Stellar manipulator to control the minds of everyone in the universe and make them praise the Great One. Eventually, the Doctor is able to rescue Kelsey after the Great One has her mind sent to the Stellar manipulator, which she used to create a vision of heaven. The Doctor captures Kelsey's mind via the TARDIS and uploads it back into her body, which causes the Great One to lose control. The Doctor then defeats the Eight Legs by hypnotising the Great One with her own message of praise, before sending a message to everyone to forget the Eight Legs, which causes them to forget, and the Eight Legs are forced to retreat in shame and defeat back to their home planet. So that was Season 49A. Now for the Christmas special. Frozen Time, written by Paul Cornell. The story would have been set in the far future of Earth and would have saw the return of the Ice Warriors. The story would have saw the Ice Warriors harvesting the power of the Earth's core so that they can stop Mars from dying, which slowly causes the Earth to freeze. Eventually, however, the Ice Warriors are defeated when the Doctor is able to reverse the Ice Warriors' work and restores the power of Earth's core. And now, back to the main season for Season 49B. The 7th episode would have been The Secrets of Maggsville, written by Neil Cross. The story would have saw the Doctor and companions investigating a small village in 18th century England, as they've heard stories about how everyone who goes to live there is never heard of or seen of again. It turns out that the village is part of an evil scheme being operated by Mrs. Maggsville, who we learn about halfway through the story is in fact a new incarnation of the Rani, played by Anna Chancellor. We would have learned that after the events of the Unit Series 3 finale, in which the Rani is kidnapped by the Master, the Rani was forced to regenerate into a new incarnation, which the Master had full control over, and made her a villain again by erasing her memories of the time she worked as an ally to the Doctor. We find that the Rani has been experimenting on humans with alien radiation to create a virus that will turn them into super strength mutant soldiers that will obey her every command. Eventually, however, the Rani is defeated when the Doctor overloads the machinery in their laboratories, which ends up blowing up the village and kills the super mutant soldiers. The 8th episode would have been The Book of Kells, written by Barnaby Edwards. The story sees the TARDIS arriving in Ireland in 1006, with the Doctor and companions investigate a local monastery where the Book of Kells was being written. For the most part, it plays out like a typical pure historical. However, partway through the story, we discover that the man claiming to be the abbot is in fact a new incarnation of the meddling monk, played by Jim Broadbent, who actually survived the Eternity War by going into isolation. We find that the monk is trying to steal the Book of Kells so that he can save it from destruction, while also hoping to use the skills of its creators to create a new printed circuit to replace a damaged component in his TARDIS. Eventually, however, the monk is defeated when the Doctor and companion switch the circuit with a fake and tricks the monk into leaving with the fake. The 9th episode would have been Robophobia, written by Nicholas Briggs. The story sees the Doctor and companions arriving on Alorai, a Kaldor cargo vessel ship owned by the Kaldor City Company. They find that a group of Vok robots have begun attacking the crew. The story sees the Doctor and companions working with a woman named Liv Chenka to investigate the robots. It turns out that the killer is in fact the ship's security chief Fangirl, dressed as a Voc robot. His plan was to crash the ship into the planet Ventalis and make it look like the Voc robot had gone mad and taken over the ship. Eventually, however, Fangirl is defeated and the low lie is saved from crashing. The 10th episode would have been the Sontaran Avengement, written by John Dorney. The story sees the Doctor companions picking up a distress signal from the planet Komav, where they discover that a Sontaran named Golden has crashed onto the planet. It turns out that Golden is a Sontaran out of time, as he comes from 10 years in the future. We learn that Golden and his battle fleet were shot down by Komav's defences. Golden ended up falling through time and ended up 10 years in the past, where he found that this version of Komav was yet to create the technology that killed his battle fleet, so he plans to destroy the planet using the planet's reactor to avenge his fallen comrades. Eventually, however, Golden is defeated when the Doctor knocks him out by hitting him on the Provic vent with one of his shoes, and the reactor is shut down. Golden is then tied up in a space shuttle and is forced to leave the planet by the Doctor. The 11th episode would have been The Deadly Alliance, written by Paul Cornell. We begin in a white void containing nothing but a castle. The castle is a very traditional Earth-like castle, though it's composed of old and new bricks. Inside the castle we see a festival going on. Everyone is happy as the king proudly watches over them. Then suddenly the castle begins to rumble and everyone is confused. The gates burst open and out of the explosion, an army of Daleks emerge. Chaos breaks out as the Daleks slaughter everyone. The king retreats into his throne room and activates a secret lever, which opens up a hidden stairway leading underground to an underground chamber, which contains random alien artifacts. He begins to search for something in particular, before he hears a voice behind him say, "Looking for this?" He turns around and we see it's the Valeyard holding a golden staff. The king says he has no idea what he's doing, but the Valeyard says that he knows. He strikes the staff against the ground and the king screams in pain, before he's frozen in time. The Valeyard then emerges from the chamber, where he finds that the Daleks have wiped out the population. He meets with the Supreme Dalek and says, "Now it begins," as we go into the opening titles. Then after the titles we see the Doctor and companions bursting through the TARDIS doors and taking off after a random off-screen adventure. They discuss where they should go next until suddenly the TARDIS powers down, everything stops and the lights go off. The doors open and a bright light shines through, with a voice calling out for the Doctor. The Doctor tells his companions to be cautious and do exactly what he says. The trio step outside and they're confronted with the White Guardian. The Doctor greets the Guardian and explains who he is to Richard and Kelsey before asking the Guardian what is wrong. He explains that something deadly is coming, something that will damage time and space itself. He shows the Doctor a picture of the king we saw in the opening titles and explains that he is the Keeper of Time. His job was to make sure that time flows as it should using the Staff of Time. He then shows footage of the Dalek attack and the Doctor's horrified when he spots the Valeyard. The Guardian explains that the Valeyard will most likely be trying to find the Keeper of Space next and will steal the Crown of Space. He asks the Doctor to stop the Valeyard and find the crown before the Valeyard does. The Doctor asks how, but the Guardian says that he can't give him any answers, but he'll find a way, before he vanishes into thin air. Then back in the TARDIS, the Doctor is noticeably tense. He explains who the Valeyard is to Kelsey and that he must be stopped. He then tries to figure out how he can reach the Keeper of Space's realm before the Valeyard does, and figures he'd have to rip a hole through space. He does some research and discovers that it can be done using the Robophobia crystal from the planet Magister 4. The Doctor scans the planet and sighs in annoyance, and says that it might be difficult trying to get a crystal, and Richard asks why. Cut to the surface of Magister 4. The camera pans through a rough looking city with people living in poverty and soldiers patrolling the streets. We see a great big tower in the distance. We zoom in through the window and we see the Master sitting on a throne, with a voiceover from the Doctor saying, "Guess." We see the Master watching from her throne with an evil grin before she hears the TARDIS landing behind her and she sighs in annoyance. The Doctor steps out and the Master tells him to go away and to let her have some fun for once. The Doctor says that he's here as he needs her help. At first the Master refuses, up until the Doctor mentions the Valeyard, where she agrees to listen. The Doctor asks for a Robophobia crystal and the Master has one of her servants go fetch her one. The Doctor explains what the Valeyard is planning and theorises that this is the beginning of something more deadly. He says that he's going to need all the help he can get and asks the Master to stand by his side and fight alongside him. The Master agrees, though only because she doesn't want to see someone else ruling the universe. Her servant then re-enters the room and brings the Master a Rokus crystal. With a crystal ready, the Doctor tells everyone to get into the TARDIS, including the Master. The TARDIS then lands on the street outside, where the four of them begin constructing a laser cannon, which the Doctor says can be used to rip a tear in reality and travel to the Keeper's realm. They eventually finish construction, and the Doctor plants the Rokus crystal into the cannon. The cannon fires on and the laser fires into the sky, which opens up a tear in the sky into the Keeper's realm. Everyone then boards the TARDIS, and the Doctor and Master begin piloting the TARDIS through the tear and into the Keeper's realm. The TARDIS then lands in front of a castle in a void. The castle is sort of similar to the Timekeeper's castle, though the bricks come from different worlds and different societies. The Doctor enters the castle and warns the Keeper about what to expect. The castle then prepares to fight and be ready for the Daleks. We see the Master and Keeper helping distribute weapons, the Doctor and Kelsey setting up a few traps, and Richard and the Keeper's best guard being sent to retrieve the Crown of Space. Eventually the Daleks arrive and chaos breaks out. The Daleks are wiping out everyone, though a few are destroyed. Meanwhile, we see that Richard has found the crown in an underground vault. Then suddenly the doors behind him burst open and out steps the Valiard and the Dalek. The Keeper's guard is killed by the Dalek, but Richard destroys the Dalek. He then tries shooting the Valiard but is out of ammo. The Valiard demands Richard to give him the crown, but Richard refuses. The Valiard then acts again, though more aggressively. Richard then tries fighting the Valiard but fails as he's thrown to the ground. The Valiard then grabs the crown and strikes Richard down with a staff, which ages Richard to death until he's nothing but a skeleton. The Valiard smiles evilly and makes his exit. Then on the planet's surface, the Doctor spots the Valiard boarding the Dalek mothership. He picks up a gun and aims it at the Valiard in the distance. And then the Valiard turns to look at the Doctor and throws him to the ground using the power of the crown, which causes him to black out. The Doctor then wakes up inside the ruined castle a few minutes later. The Daleks are gone, but the castle is nearly destroyed and half of the population is dead. The Doctor finds the Master and the Keeper and asks where Richard and Kelsey are. We then hear Kelsey screaming in horror in the distance, and the Doctor dashes off to find Kelsey. He finds Kelsey in the chamber, crying over Richard's skeleton. The Keeper comforts Kelsey and the Doctor watches from behind. He whispers to himself, "I'm sorry." He then goes over and hugs Kelsey before stating that no one else will die today. The Doctor asks the Keeper if he knows what the Valiard wants, and he explains that he has an idea, and that the two items the Valiard now possesses are the first key step to claiming immortality. The Doctor tells the Master to help Kelsey back to the TARDIS and for the Keeper to come with, and the story ends with the Doctor saying that they're going to save the universe. The final episode would have been The Black Heart, written by Paul Cornell. The episode begins with a voiceover from the Keeper of Space, with the camera focusing on a rocky planet in the purple void. The Keeper tells a tale about the place we're seeing, which is called the Outer Realm, a limbo outside of time and space which is home to the Wise Ones, after most of them retreated from the universe. We close in on what appears to be a ritual site, as he goes on to say that the Wise Ones created him and the Keeper of Time to monitor and guide time and space within the universe. He then goes on to talk about a device named the Black Heart. He explains that when one possesses both the crown and staff, and stands on the Black Heart, they will become immortal. We then hear the Doctor say, "So that's his game," as the camera zooms out and we click to everyone in the Doctor's TARDIS. As the Doctor sets some controls on the TARDIS, the Keeper continues to tell this story. He explains that the only way one can enter the Outer Realm is by possessing both the crown and staff. The Doctor says that there must be another way, and so the Keeper thinks to himself before saying that there is, but it's a bit fiddly. He explains that if both Keepers grant someone access, they will be taken to the Outer Realm. However, he goes on to remind the Doctor that the Keeper of Time is frozen in time. The Doctor thinks for a few seconds and figures out that if he can combine the power of the TARDIS with the Spacekeeper's own energy, he might be able to unfreeze the Timekeeper. The Spacekeeper says the idea is beyond insane, but it's all they have, so the Keeper uses the TARDIS's telepathic circuits to take everyone to the Keeper of Time's realm. There, the Keeper and Master begin working on unfreezing the other Keeper. Meanwhile, we'd have some serious character stuff between the Doctor and Kelsey, where Kelsey reveals that if they stop the Valiard, she wishes to go home. Eventually, everything is set up and, after nearly overloading the TARDIS, the Keeper of Time is unfrozen. The Spacekeeper then explains the situation to the other Keeper, and he agrees to help send the Doctor's team to the Outer Realm. The Doctor, Kelsey and the Master then board the TARDIS, and the Keepers chant their ritual, which deletes the TARDIS from the universe and places it inside the Outer Realm. The TARDIS lands on a rocky planet, where the Doctor meets with the Wise Ones and explains the situation to them. The Doctor begins to formulate a plan on how to stop the Valiard, however before he has time to fully figure it out, the Dalek mothership emerges in the sky. Kelsey asks the Doctor what they're going to do. He pauses for a minute before telling Kelsey that there may be a way. He tells Kelsey to retrieve a machine from the TARDIS. Kelsey bursts into the TARDIS, however the Doctor closes the doors behind her. He then pulls out a remote control and presses a button, which causes the TARDIS to dematerialise. On board the TARDIS, Kelsey is confused as to what's going on, and then a hologram of the Doctor appears with a pre-recorded message from the Doctor. It explains that if this message has been activated, it can only mean they're in fatal danger. The TARDIS has been programmed to return Kelsey home, back to her own time and space. The message goes on to tell Kelsey that when she arrives home, to leave the TARDIS. Just lock it up and throw away the key. The Doctor says his final goodbye before the message ends. The TARDIS then lands and the doors are unlocked. Kelsey dashes outside and she finds herself in the junkyard in the year 2012. Back in the Outer Realm, the Master calls the Doctor stupid for sending Kelsey away. However, the Doctor says that he made a promise to Richard that she would never be harmed, and that he's keeping that promise. The Doctor takes the Master's hand and asks if she's ready. She says yes, and the two help the Wise Ones prepare as the Dalek ships begin to descend. The Daleks roll out and battle commences. We'd have a massive fight between the Wise Ones and the Daleks. The Doctor gets distracted by a group of Daleks, giving the Valiard an open window to reach the Black Heart. However, before he can reach the Black Heart, he's kicked to the ground by the Master. The two begin to fight, however the Master is able to throw the Valiard down again. She then grabs the staff and the crown and throws the crown over to the Doctor. She then grabs hold of the staff and tells the Doctor that it's been fun, before snapping the staff in half. A wave of energy is then emitted, which ages to death all the Daleks and the Master herself. Everyone pauses and stares at the piles of bones and no Dalek. The Doctor sheds a single tear before looking directly at the Valiard and shouting, "No!" The Valiard dashes over to the Doctor and tries to kill him. The Doctor is thrown to the ground and is dodging most of the Valiard's attacks, with both of them fighting over the crown. Eventually, the Doctor manages to push the Valiard over. He snatches the crown off him, holds it in the air and states that this ends now. He then throws the crown to the ground and stomps on it, which causes a giant wormhole to open in space. Both the Doctor and Valiard begin to be pulled in. The Doctor manages to grab onto a pillar, but is slowly losing his grip. And then the Valiard, who is also holding onto a pillar, kicks the Doctor, which causes him to lose his grip and fall through the wormhole. The wormhole closes and the Valiard is left alone. He states that he is victorious and that the universe is now his, as he begins to laugh evilly. We then fade to white before fading in on the Doctor waking up in the desert. We hear a voice in the distance asking him if he's alright. Then the person runs over to the Doctor, this person being played by Annabelle Scully. The person asks who he is before pausing and saying that, "It's you. Your face is different, but it's you, isn't it? Hello, Doctor." The Doctor asks who she is and where exactly he is, and the woman says, "It's me, Doctor. Romana." The Doctor is confused but shocked. How is Romana here? And then he says, "If you're alive, then that means it worked. And if the plan worked, then that means that this is..." As the camera pulls out and we see that we're on Gallifrey. The story would then end on that massive cliffhanger, with a message popping up announcing that the Doctor will return in the Fall of the Doctor, before going into the end credits. And that concludes season 49 of Doctor Who. This was considered a really good season and made the hype for the upcoming special massive. Before we go, a thank you to Time Lord Master 108, who has helped me a lot when it comes to this season, especially the season finale, who practically created the outline for me. So join me next time for the Fall of the Doctor. Until then, thank you for watching and goodbye.